Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I'd like to take a look at the many different Milotics of GLC, which is a stage 1 water type, if that wasn't obvious. But yeah, it's a stage 1 water type, Milotic. So what is GLC? For those of you who don't know, well, it's a single prize only, no Robux format. So no V-Stars, no Megas, no GXs, no Radiant Pokemon, basically only cheap Pokemon exclusively. It's also singleton, except basic energy, because as mentioned in previous videos, that would be very painful if GLC was just a single copy of basic energy. But yeah, that'd be funny to see actually. But singleton, so only one of Pokemon. That does mean you'll only be able to play one Feebas and one Milotic in a deck, however, and only one type per deck. So unfortunately, Milotic is in a spot where it is only a water type. So unless they release a set in the future, which features Pokemon that cross over in types for whatever reason, then there will only ever be Milotics for water decks. But yeah, first of all, we have to kind of talk about Feebas, and I think Feebas is honestly the best part about running Milotic in GLC. There's just something so funny and cute about Feebas. However, if we are being serious for just a moment, Feebas itself is a bit of a liability because it only has 30 HP, and there's a lot of Pokemon in GLC, very many Pokemon, including a lot of basics actually nowadays, just evolving basics, that can casually do 30 damage for 1 or 2 energy. So Feebas being a bit of a shame, but it is a liability. However, as you'll see with these Milotics, apart from like maybe 1 or 2, maybe, the vast majority are designed to just sit on the bench really and provide you with support or with a very disruptive or annoying attack. So one thing I will say at the very least is that if you can get Feebas out of the active, then, try and do that, and then you can attack with, better water type Pokemon basically, and have Milotic sit on the bench and look pretty basically and contribute to the deck. So yeah, that's kind of like the role of Feebas and Milotic. So the first one we can take a look at here is the one from Dragons Exalted. I don't think this Milotic is terrible. It's certainly better than some of the other ones on this list, funnily enough. Has the attack clear search, allows you to search your deck for any 3 cards and put them into your hand, which is quite nice. Granted, there are some very annoying shuffle draw effects, of course, like N and Iono, Marnie, Judge, quite a few that do see play, but it is still quite a nice option if you're trying to build around control. However, if you want to use this in the early game, you do have to worry about Feebas being a liability, of course, and Water Pulse doing 60 damage and a sleep is fairly weak, of course, unless you're like trying to build around a sleep, because there is a fair few amount of water types that do inflict a sleep, which is cool. So you could build around that if you really, really wanted to. But a sleep is not the best condition by any stretch of imagination. It's very flippant, one flip of a coin and they're awake. So, it's a bit annoying, but again, not the worst Milotic I've ever seen. Next one is the worst Milotic I've ever seen. This one is terrible. By all stretch of imagination, you'd be better off playing one Feebas and not run this Milotic. You would be better off doing that because it is terrible. The ability sadly doesn't work because there's no Pokemon EX in GLC. And Waterfall does 60 for Water Double Colorless, and the Milotic we literally just looked at also does asleep. So strictly the worst Milotic on this list by a landslide. Next up, though, is we have one of my personal favorites, actually, which is the one from Crimson Invasion. Recently got this card, actually. Has the attack TLC, which is a very strange name for attack, to be honest. It says shuffle one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has any damage counters on it, and all the cards attached to it into their deck. Very annoying and very disruptive. Of course, it's going to depend on how quickly you can actually damage one of these Pokemon, and will it be relevant? Is it, you shuffling in a basic that can be resetted quite easily? Or are you shuffling in like a stage 2, for example, that has a lot of energy on it, and that's obviously very annoying for your opponent. So TLC could be very, very annoying. Also, Ocean Cyclone is okay, but 4 energy is a wee bit expensive just to do 80 and 10 damage spread. But if you think Milotic will stick around for a bit, then Ocean Cyclone could definitely be viewed as a 2-KO situation, where you basically just 2-KO a lot of Pokemon while also doing 20 damage spread. You could view it as that, but personally I think it's still a wee bit too expensive. Next up, though, is we have my personal favorite Milotic, and that is the one from Dragon Majesty. Aura Wave doing 13 Confusion is kind of whatever, but Aqua Split is really cool. 40 damage and then 40 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. Does have some quite nice synergy with other water spread attackers, including several different Dugons. Not just this Dugon featured on the right-hand side here, but also from... what's the set called? I believe it's Unbroken Bonds? Yeah, Unbroken Bonds is a Dugon I'm thinking of. But yeah, there's a couple of stage 1 water types that spread a bit of damage around, so you could build around that if you really wanted to. It's not like the best thing in the world, and there is, of course, bench protection, but at the end of the day, it's a nice option, and not all types have access to bench protection as of right now, so having Aqua Split is a nice option for sure. It's not great, of course, but it's just my personal favorite, just because I like messing around with spread decks mainly, but that's just my 2 cents anyway. Next up, though, is we have one from Darkness Ablaze, and it has the ability Bright Heal, allowing you to heal 20 damage, and they said 30, heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon. Very much a anti-spread card. Personally, I'm not a fan of this because I think it's a wee bit boring. It's more of like a meta call, I guess. But if you are going to a tournament and you feel like there are going to be a lot of spread decks in that event, then this Milotic would not be a bad shout, if you feel like you're going to play against a lot of spread. But aside from that, I don't think it's particularly impressive, and healing 20 is just not a lot. Even by GLC standards, it's not a lot of damage to be healing. So could have a niche somewhere, but to be honest, I don't see it being particularly great. Next up, though, is we have a Milotic from Evolving Skies. Pretty interesting one, has the ability Do Guard that says, whenever your opponent plays a supporter card from their hand, prevent all effects of that card done to you or your hand, which is quite nice. Recently we've seen a lot of very annoying supporters, including Xerxic's Plan, which is the one that discards cards from your hand until you have 3 cards remaining. So that would prevent you from, discarding the cards, which is nice. There's also a couple of other things, which is nice. So again, I don't think this ability is bad by any stretch of imagination, but I think there are just more interesting things to be playing. Like, I'm not saying this card is bad and you shouldn't play it, but there are more interesting Pokemon basically in GLC to build around. It is cool though that it is a Rapid Strike label, so you can use stuff like Artillery to find it, as well as all your other Rapid Strike cards. So, the Stadium, for example, Karina. So it's quite nice that there's that combo, but again, nothing too crazy. The coin flip attack is also quite fun, can potentially do 140, which is quite a lot, but yeah. At the end of the day, nothing too crazy, but still pretty cool. Nice to see. Next up, though, is we do have one that has a lovely art rare. Just a bit of a shame that the card is a bit meh, really. Water Arrow doing 50 to one of your opponent's Pokemon is quite a lot of spread for 1 energy. Then Mellow Wave does 60 for 2, and your opponent's active is now asleep. So essentially just a direct upgrade of some of the older Milotics, I guess, in terms of energy to damage ratio. But nothing too crazy here. I do think Water Arrow is doing above average damage with sniping. But aside from that, there's not really that much of a reason, I would say. The art rare with Candace is definitely quite nice. It's not really much of a reason to run this, but I do like the art rare, so I'd give people the pass for playing this, to be honest. It's one of those things where it's okay, but I don't think it's quite good enough to run in GLC, and it's not quite good enough to, play at a competitive level or anything. So it's a bit of a shame, though, because it is very cool and the artwork is very pretty. But yeah, that is Silver Tempest to Milotic. Then we have a one from Paradox Rift, has the ability Lifeboat, that says once in your turn when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may use this ability. And each player puts a basic Pokemon from the discard pile onto their bench. Your opponent does this first. I think this is really cool. Like, it just gives you an option to recover a basic Pokemon you want to attack with again. And it also gives your opponent a choice as well. And that might seem quite annoying for you because they're getting a basic back that they could reuse. But you could also play some mind games on your opponent and bait them, essentially, into putting a Pokemon back. And you might want to take advantage of that either with a sniping move, maybe it's a low HP Pokemon, so you go and snipe them. Or it's a Pokemon that you think they'll want to take back that also has low HP, so you can boss it up, stuff like that, which I think is quite fun. Aside from that, though, it's probably more of a this is going to be really good when you can catch people off guard, but most of the time it's probably just a bit better to run, Rescue Stretcher or Revive. But aside from that, definitely not a bad ability for sure. Quite a fun Milotic to use. And lastly, we have a one from Twilight Masquerade. It's been a lot of Milotics over the years. This one has the ability Mentally Calm. It says your opponent's Pokemon in play and all attached cards can't be put into your opponent's hand. Bit boring, to be honest. I think this Milotic's a bit boring. It's alright. It stops Ace Roller. It stops like Tour Scenario. But like aside from that, it's just like meh. It's not really stopping enough to be interesting in my books. It's a fun ability sometimes. It can be quite annoying, especially if some weird stall deck that relies on high HP GLC Pokemon ever becomes a thing, which I don't think it will. but if it did, then this could be quite useful against it. But aside from that, and maybe doing above average damage with Hydro Splash, at least compared to other Milotics, yeah, nothing too crazy there. But yeah, it's all right though. But yeah, thank you for watching. I do a new set review for GLC with each new release, so subscribe if you're interested in being updated. The most recent one I did was for Shrouded Fable, and I'll do another one for Stellar Crown, working on that video already. This is now a series to stay, so let me know which Pokemon you'd like to see. I've got a long list to work my way through, mind you. I think Articuno was one of the ones I was considering doing next, but with Milotic being a suggestion, I'll probably do Lantern maybe, or Gengar, because that one keeps cropping up. But yeah, I do have a list. I'm getting through them, so I've also made a playlist. So if you want to scroll through them quickly, then playlist is there. Also, if you want to dive into the competitive side, Omnipug and the format creator Tricky Jim have both done fantastic videos and guides for each type if you happen to be new for GLC, or new to GLC, I guess. But yeah, either way, it's been Aaron Power, and yeah, thank you for watching.